Yeah, Greg.
Okay, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Welcome so much and thank you for joining us this afternoon at this very exciting event at the hosted by the scholarly group of the Student Learning Project team. And this also forms part of a pre-festival event for our upcoming HALTASA Festival, which will be happening next week. So the Student Learning Scholarly Group is very excited to host this book launch as a HALTASA pre-event, as well as to show some of the scholarship involved that HALTASA is involved in. So we want to keep this afternoon's session exciting. We want to keep it interactive and want to bring in a festive vibe, but maintaining still a scholarly vibe as well to highlight and showcase the great scholarly work that's been done in the space around student peer support initiatives in higher education. So welcome everybody and thank you for joining us this afternoon at this book launch. So my name is Greg Krull and I am from Wits University, but I'm also one of the deputy chairpersons of HALTASA. So before we get into the book launch, just a brief advert, if I may, to remind everyone that HALTASA Festival is happening next week. And so we do invite you, registrations have closed, but if you want to, there still might be space. You can contact one of our administrator, Nomfundo. So we'd like to just let you know that we're looking very much forward to HALTASA Festival happening as our annual conference event. I'm putting in the link to the program into the chat. It's a very exciting event, so we hope that you can join us for that. As it starts on Monday and runs throughout the week, we've got various exciting events happening both in the morning and in the afternoon. But more importantly, today's event is the launch of this very exciting book. It's been a long time, a lot of work and in progress to get the book published, but it's very exciting for this book entitled Student Peer Support Initiatives in Higher Education, a collection of South African case studies. It's the first book of this kind in South Africa, so we're very excited that it showcases initiatives happening in South African higher education and around student peer support. So let's get straight into the program. So today's program is about, we're going to just busy with the welcome at the moment. I'm going to shortly hand over to our HALTASA president, Rita Ganes, and who's going to give the opening address. And then we're going to have the reading of the foreword of the book by Professor Kasturi Bahari-Leek. And then we're going to spend a bit of time getting to know the editors and the team involved in producing this wonderful book and the journey that they've gone through. We're then have a time for a little bit of interactive waterfall chat, and then we'll look at some of the case studies and contributors and get opportunity to engage with the contributors and those involved in the book. And also very excitingly, we're going to have a lucky draw at the end of today's session. So can I ask if you just, while we're busy in the session this afternoon, we do have a Google form. So I've just put the Google form into the chat there. Please click on the Google form and enter your name to be eligible to be able to enter into the lucky draw that you will then win a copy of this wonderful and exciting book. So please do click on the link in the Google form in the chat so that you can put your name into the lucky draw to be able to go through it. And so we're going to end off with the lucky draw and then a vote of thanks at the end. And that's our program for today's session. So then I have the privilege of introducing our president of HALTASA, Rita Ganes, who's also a colleague of mine at Wits University. Without further ado, I'm going to ask Rita if you would please come in and do the opening address for us. Thank you very much.
Greg, do another click, Greg.
Another click?
Yeah, we're on the program page.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Not sure why it's delaying a bit today. There we go.
Thanks. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Greg. Greg, you have such a festival voice. So it's, I think, gearing us up for next week and the festival as well. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to not only the HALTASA Fest 2022 pre-event, as Greg has just suggested and marketed as well, but mainly to this exciting book launch. We are very appreciative to have you celebrate with us our second book for this year. So we're really proud, as Greg has indicated, of all the contributions and collaborations that has gone into this book coming alive at this point. Sue and Zena, I still remember that December in PE, 2019 it was, when as the student CLC leads, you were putting together various activity plans for this book. We are also very grateful to our past president, Kasturi, who was very passionate about scholarship as an agenda for HALTASA and for securing the UCDG funds for this project. We've certainly come a long, long way. Stop, collaborate, and listen. For those of you as old as me, the beginning of this Vanilla Ice song rang in my head as I read the motivations for this compilation. This compilation is a true testament of collaboration through courage, resilience, perseverance, as well as dedication to our current and future higher education students and stakeholders. It certainly highlights the past CLC and the editorial team's stewardship as they work through the years to breathe life into this book. What a sterling job, Zena, Nelia, Tayuri, Edgar, and Sue. Heather Morrow says, it is our feelings that add true color to our stories. Emotions or highlight the facts. Sorry, emotions can shade or highlight the facts. With every story, there are positive and negative emotions that reflect what you felt during the situation, how you feel in retelling the story, and finally, how you want the other person hearing the story to feel. To those who bravely took on the HALTASA call then to showcase your feelings, your institutional story around the uplifting work you do with students, we salute you for adding your true color to brighten our reading days. Thank you so much for not only your collaborations in this area, but showcasing the teamwork that goes into everyday student support within our sector. More especially, we thank you for the guidance through the case studies on how we too can have new ideas towards enhancing student access and success. This book is only the beginning of further scholarship possibilities in areas that need our collective ideas for the everyday of our higher education context. And we encourage you all to take up the opportunities to share your valuable practice stories, as our authors have done, that can make a huge contributions towards social justice and transformation imperatives within and beyond South Africa. Thank you. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks very much, Rita. Yes, thank you so much. I see a couple of hands coming up. Thank you. That was a lovely opening address to get us situated for this book. And I want to just echo what Rita has just said in terms of this amazing scholarly achievement that the team and all the contributors that have been involved in getting this book published. But it is something that as HALTASA, we want to move onwards and upwards around and look at further opportunities for additional scholarly activities and publishing works in the future. So please do contribute with us as we move forward. So going from one HALTASA, the current HALTASA president, to another HALTASA or former HALTASA president, I would now like to introduce Professor Kasturi Bihari-Leek, who is the past president of HALTASA and also the Dean of CHED, which is the Center for Higher Education Development at UCT, who contributed the foreword to the book. And so we've invited Professor Bihari-Leek to come in today and read the foreword to us to really situate it and contextualize the book for us. Thank you, Kasturi. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you for the invitation. I have one request. Could I ask the editors of the book to please turn on their cameras? It's very lonely out here. And I know your next session might go into the actual authors, so this is not to take away anything from the authors, but I think, yeah, it's good to be in conversation, right? So thank you very much. Sue, I know you said that I should read, but what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, just pick out some highlights from the foreword, just to sort of share what has come out for me in revisiting, you know, this particular launch and also the timing of it. So let's see how it goes. So if I look at firstly, well done, excellent. I mean, this is fantastic, right? As Rita said, to bring the scholarly work into Haltasa, which many years ago struggled with the kind of support. And as you know, we struggle in teaching and learning to gain the legitimacy for our work. We always have to make the argument, the labor around it is so detailed. But your contribution in terms of this book and scholarship makes that work easier. And may it be widely referenced and cited and understood as part of this collective drive to make sure that we are not seen as just handmaidens or practitioners and, you know, these crafters who do only the practice work and cannot engage in theoretical, robust scholarship. So well done on that front. When I look at the cover of the book, I think it encapsulates some of the key discourses that we are concerned with at Haltasa. And I say we because I feel so connected to the project still, and still feel a taproot through all of you and through Rita, etc. And if we look at the title, Student Peer Support Initiatives. Now, if I think about peer support and the need for peer support in our current context and in this time, what does that tell us about? And what does it tell us? What does it challenge us to do? I think that if we're looking at students coming into the system, we would agree that the very disparate sort of backgrounds and entry points offer a very unlevel kind of playing field for students, right? And in the old system, there's a lot of leaning to the so-called expert in the room who then becomes the teacher, the academic, the person in charge, etc. What student peer support means is that we are changing the power dynamics around how teaching and learning are conceptualized and who owns this project. And when we talk from a decolonial point of view and say that what students bring into the classroom matters, then it does matter in such an important way in the case studies that you have written and put together, because it means that peers can talk at a level where they are comfortable with each other and are able to share the common sort of challenge to sort of achieve what higher education sets out for them. So in this way, in compiling an edition like this, it signals and highlights the need for the non-hierarchical structures we need in teaching and learning. We need to flatten those structures. We all come in with different sets of knowledges. And the teacher, I don't think, can claim that they own that. We might have been, you know, schooled in a particular way, but students have such rich narratives and literacies that we're beginning to tap into. So again, when I connect this to academic development and educational development, which is the heart of Haltasa's work, we are also signaling to the sector that we value the contributions of students, that most of our work is centered around how to enhance students' abilities to navigate the system and to succeed, but also to find their voice. So your compilation gives voice to those initiatives and interventions. And I think that's important, that we have a variety of voices and people and bodies that are being recognized, which previously would have been silenced and left on the margins. So this is great for not just the editors and the authors, but also for the kind of focal point of where I think HELTASA is headed in collapsing the silos, dismantling the hierarchies, and working in rich partnerships with each other, with our students, with stakeholders, etc. So when I look at the word or the discourse initiatives, I think that that says a lot about trying, attempting, intervention, responding, because we come up with an initiative not from nowhere. We are reading a situation, we're reading the room, we're reading the sector. And so we put forward an initiative in order to test whether that can actually respond to the challenges we face. So that word initiative is rich, it holds a lot of promise. And I think that your compilation again signals that while certain areas, and as Gregor said, this is the first time that this book of this nature has been launched, that this is a growing field. So this is not the end of the story on student peer support. This becomes the launch pad, literally, for you to move to the next level and the next level, and to see how through the work we can actually lessen our need to draw on theories from afar, but actually you're coming up with theories from here on the ground. And from the case studies, we can begin to articulate and enunciate what we understand by all these titles and concepts that come up in higher education across the world. As I said, President, now I can see how when these topics come up, whether they are student partnerships or academic development and teaching approaches, they mean different things in different contexts. Our context is so rich. And because of the complexity of our context, we have been forced to, if you like, but also invited to engage deeply. We don't take things for granted because nothing is given, nothing's just handed down or handed out. And let us not forget that this is the place from where we speak, we write, we are. So again, the book tells us that this might be a direction we need to think about other initiatives for HELTASA, for different collaborations, and so forth. So just want to check something quickly. So when I think also about the fact that the case studies were drawn from a very wide disciplinary base, this also talks to the kind of trend I think we're moving in higher education towards, and that is the transdisciplinary, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary kind of collaborations that I think, we're all starting to talk and hear about. I think as HELTASA, we need to engage with what that means. In the various places in which I've heard the terms, there is confusion about what transdisciplinary means. And maybe confusion is not the right word, but I think it's a nice thing to unpack, because transdisciplinary, I don't think, is having 6 disciplines standing side by side and calling that transdisciplinary. Actually, it's the emergence of what happens when those disciplines talk to each other. And that new thing that is born is actually the trans aspect. And I think in many ways you're doing this in HELTASA. With the unconference last year and now with the festival this year, you're going beyond, beyond the ordinary, the traditional, and in a way that is very transdisciplinary. So don't lose sight of that, not just in the book, but in the ways in which we work and the kinds of keynotes we need to be setting at our own institutions, right? To trouble these terms and not just take them on board because they're coming from a particular place, but really ask, what does it mean for us, for the student, for HELTASA, for our universities, for the sector? I've already spoken about the really rich contribution in terms of the scholarship across Heltasa. And I also want to give the nod to the first book launch on professional learning by Rosaline Govender and Anthea Jacobs. And I think we started off thinking and talking about the Heltasa imprint, that we'd like to work towards something where we could have many contributions, put out there with a stamp, if you like, an imprint. But as I think about the word imprint, I think that Heltasa, all of you, all the projects, the scholarly projects, all the project teams, you are actually establishing a footprint. And that's very important in terms of shaping the sector, of making Heltasa the place that people want to engage with, to think about how do we unpack this? How can we think about it differently? And from what you've put out already and the program coming up for the festival, absolutely, on point in terms of all of those initiatives. So I want to end off by saying very well done. We are so proud of you as the editors of getting this book to completion, as we were with Rosaline and Anthea. We're so proud of all the authors who have contributed, taken the time, etc. And I really want the scholarly publications not to become just a tick box so we can advance in our academic careers. But as we write, this really makes a difference to the question, why are we here? What are we here for? Right? And if we can think about the way we come into this work with that broader goal, the rewards, in a sense, are going to be phenomenal. I want to thank Rita for excellent leadership of Heltasa through this entire year and through all the projects and in the build-up towards the festival. I wish you very well, and thank you so much for inviting me, for remembering I'm, still here, always. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kasturi. Thank you. Some wonderfully stirring words and a challenge to us as Heltasa. And thank you so much for giving us some context of where we come from, where we are, and where we need to go in the future. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'd like the team not to disappear, the editing team, because we're going to move on to just a brief overview. And please, as I introduce you, please put your camera on and wave, and just to show the amazing amount of work that this team or editing team has done. To introduce the team, starting with Associate Professor Sue Prather, who's the Teaching and Learning Specialist in the Office of the DVC academic at the University of the Western Cape. And sort of the, if I can say, if you don't mind, sort of mastermind of today's proceedings. Thank you very much, Sue. Then also in part of the editing team, we have Dr. Zina Cupido, who's the Director of Fundani, the Center for Higher Education Development at the Cape Peninsula University of Technology. Zina was around, hopefully you can turn your camera on. And then we also have Ms. Tayuri Govender, who is the Teaching and Learning Specialist at Varsity College, the Waterfall campus. And then we also have Dr. Nelia Prad, who's the Senior Coordinator for the Center for Staff Development at the University of Johannesburg. And then our other editor is Mr. Edgar Samkane, who's the Quality Officer in the Quality Management Directorate at the Mangasuta University of Technology. So these are the 5 very hard-working ladies and gentlemen who have been working steadily for the past few years in bringing this book to life. And I'm shortly going to hand over to that team to take it forward. But before I do so well done to all of you, and well done in terms of getting in all of the contributors involved. And thank you so much for really bringing this book to life and the amazing work that you've done in getting this scholarly work published. So I'm going to, before I hand over to the team to talk about this journey, I'm just going to show a YouTube video that just briefly highlights the journey of what it took to get this book to life. Give me a second to change. There we go.
you, Greg. I think,
Thank
yeah. No, thanks very much. This was supposed to come after my talk, but
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I
Well,
I was going to give my talk and then say for the visual
Okay.
learners, we have this visual presentation. But I think the visual came first. But good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you for joining us to celebrate this exciting event, which actually forms part of the Hiltasa pre-fest event. I'll just do a short commercial break. Greg already invited you all earlier on today, but just to say we hope to see you all next week as well. We have an exciting lineup of academic engagement with a fun, interactive, and festive feel attached to our sessions. We also have some lucky draws lined up and prizes to give away in every session. So please join us, and we hope to see you all there. So to start off very quickly, I want to just say thank you, a big thank you to the Student Learning Scholarly Project team for hosting this book launch. It has been a long journey for the writing team, which actually formed part of the SIGs. So you can imagine when we started, we were called SIGs when we started off, the Special Interest Group in the old Hiltasa structure, which later evolved to a more inclusive a name change, which was Collaborative Learning Communities, where Rita was the coordinator for the 5 different CLCs. So the editors of the book actually formed part of those that CLC for tutor, mentoring, and supplemental instruction team. So reflecting back to the start of this journey, as Tayuri had put on the clip, it actually brings into focus the value in attending conferences or unconferences and other spaces that open up opportunities for networking, collaborating with colleagues and stakeholders that work in the higher education field. For us, the awareness and importance of these conversations around student peer support initiatives and programs actually started or came into focus in May 2018 when we were invited by the South African National Resource Center FYE conference in Durban as the Hiltasa team to do a workshop on student support. And while participating in this workshop and engaging with the participants, we started to reflect on what was happening in that workshop and what needed to happen as we moved forward. And we realized there needed to be a space for more conversations, more engagements with universities on student support. So that's where the idea started. And Rita, I don't know if you got your date wrong or we got our date wrong, but in December 2018 was the Hiltasa conference in PE. And you, as the CLC convener, we had our meeting with you in PE, and it was your suggestion. So, you know, we were talking about how to engage with the different higher education institutions. And you suggested, I don't know, I'm competing with somebody else there. Greg, you want to mute them? Thank you. So you actually suggest, why didn't you put together a guidebook or some kind of book in which we could, you know, use as a stepping stone to these engagements? So the PE conference was a brainstorming of ideas and excitement, and that's how the seed was planted and the work began. We then, via Hiltasa website and email communications, had sent out a call to invite higher education institutions in South Africa to share their best practices with regards to student peer support initiatives. We received about 10 case studies from a wide range of institutions in South Africa. And we are very grateful to all the contributors for sharing and reflecting on their student peer support programs at their institutions. The primary purpose of the collection of case studies was to provide a mechanism to share, to start conversations, to develop communities of practice, and collaboration around institutions. We feel that the design of the student peer support book certainly addresses the purpose. The book provides rich snapshots of innovative interventions and practices, together with information on student learning theories. We have frameworks and concepts that could be used to strengthen and inform student peer support initiatives in South Africa. We also have points to ponder on that we signpost in the book throughout the book. And towards the end of the book, we bring together key components and guiding principles that could assist universities to develop their own student peer initiative while taking into account their individual institutional context. So in conclusion, I can see people are showing me time. As the previous lead for the CLC Tutor, Mentor, and SI group, I would like to mention that it was an absolute pleasure working with Zina, Nelia, Tayuri, and Edgar on this book project. We enjoyed the collaborative work, and we have definitely grown professionally and personally from this exercise. We would also like to thank the HILTASA leaders, Kasturi at that time, and Rita, the CLC coordinator, for supporting the CLC book project and giving us the guidance and the process in which to carry out this project to completion. So thank you guys for that. So with that, I'm going to end, and thank you all for being here today. Greg, over to you.
Thanks very much, Sue, and apologies for playing the video before and not after. But it was, as said in the chat, it was really a lovely video. So well done to Tayuri and team. That was a lovely overview of the journey that all of you have been on in the process of getting us here today. And thank you, Sue, for just sharing the sort of themes and the processes involved. So before we get into the very exciting part of looking at what are the different case studies and some of the contributors in the book, we're going to do a little waterfall chat for everyone to interact. So I'd like you to think about the question, when you think of peer support, what comes to mind? Just very quickly, you need to give you a minute. In the chat, we're going to do it as a waterfall, so you can start typing, but don't press enter yet. So when you think of peer support, what comes to mind? Student peer support initiatives in higher education. When you think of peer support, what's something that comes into your mind, or what does it lead you to think about? So please, in the chat, type what your thoughts are, and I'm going to give you just a minute or so, less than a minute, and then we can all press enter together, and then the team will facilitate in terms of some of the responses and the comments that come through in the chat. So I'm going to give you about another 30 seconds or so. Just when you think of peer support, what comes to mind? Please type your thoughts, your reflections, your sort of what comes to the top of your head in terms of peer support. And then we will then be able to then share that in the waterfall. So got another about 20 seconds or so. Okay, and that's time. So if you can, when I say enter, you can press the enter button to put your thoughts into the chat. So 3, 2, 1, press enter, and let's see the waterfall. Very nice. A lot of thoughts coming through around what's happening in this space. So thank you very much for putting in your responses to the chat. So I'm going to hand over. I don't know if it's Sue or the team. You want to pick out, look through some of the responses and draw out some of what you see in terms of the opinions and the themes.
Greg, we hand over to the student learning scholar.
Okay. Thank you. So Nelia and team, if you want to come in.
Sue, Donnie will be picking up on this. Donnie, I'm going to hand over to you. Thanks, Nelia. Thanks, Greg and Sue, and hi, colleagues. It's very nice to be here today. I'm wearing two hats. So on the one hand, I'm part of the current student learning project team in Altasa. I'm also a contributing author to this book. But if I'm looking at what's come through, some really exciting things that resonate. So someone said students supporting and learning from each other, student interactions, growth, success, and skills. So there's that idea of students finding a space where they can work together. I said safe space, where they can work together safely, but they can learn with the support from someone who is not the lecturer, who is not a person that might come across as an authority figure. So linking to what Kasturi said earlier, breaking down some of those hierarchies that exist and come into being so easily. Someone said tutorials, mentorship, sharing challenges and strategies. That makes me think of the diversity of examples that have been captured in the book. And when we talk about the case studies, we'll delve into that a little deeper. Sue said students as partners, absolutely. Bringing in students as part of the learning community, rather than saying it is staff and students. Care, a very important one. Thanks, Theory. I think that's something that's come through quite strongly since COVID, and certainly I see it coming through in the literature as well, is the importance of building in care in student support and student success spaces. Scaffolding learning, sharing knowledge, skills, and experiences, holistic well-being. Another thing that the student learning project team is really interested in is that idea of the holistic student support. And again, I want to say, come to our session next week, Thursday, because we're going to expand on that a little bit. Peer support is an initiative that evolves around peer learning, which foster understanding on a peer level. Thanks, Agnes. So you're highlighting that important relationship that happens among peers without involvement from lecturers or administrators or professional staff within the university. Love, the underpinning principle, so important, Zina. Thank you very much. Again, speak to that idea of care, speak to the idea of a university context being a humane space, seeing students as people, seeing everyone we work with as people, coming together and pulling each other up. Wonderful, Nokutula. Thanks so much. So absolutely, I think that idea of a peer support initiative, regardless of how it is packaged or framed, is important both for helping the students integrate, be part of the institution, making sure there's a safe space where they can feel cared for and loved, and then obviously the importance of all of those elements to learning actually taking place within the room. Thanks, Greg. I'll stop there.
Thanks very much, Dani, and thank you to this student learning team for just facilitating that process for us, and again, love to see the principles coming through of coming together and of care coming through as well. And then I think that leads us very nicely into the themes of this particular book, at the contributors and the case studies in our next session. So many of these are reflected in the chapters in this book in terms of what the case studies were that the contributors worked on. So as Sue said earlier, there were 10 universities that shared their best practices on student support initiatives, and we'd like to thank each of the contributors for their contributions, and we'll get to hear from some of these contributors now. So I'm going to hand over to Zina and to Edgar to take us through the next activity.
Thank you, Greg, for that. It was wonderful to see, how peer student initiatives are taking on the principles of the heart, I'm wanting to say. That, initially where it all started was from a deficit, helping students catch up. But it certainly has changed quite significantly, I think, over the years, especially over the past 2 years. So thank you. Thanks so much for that, colleagues. So we have in front of us the contributors of the case studies. And it was really an exciting journey. I mean, we had case studies that spanned across different types of permutations of mentoring, tutor programs within the extended program, like Shona Lombard had shared in her chapter. Artie had shared more holistic support. Amal and her team with the student support programs, Ubuntu through cross-year student academic programs. And I think it alludes to what Kasturi spoke about earlier, is the transdisciplinary nature of peer support initiatives that's taking place within the university space. I don't want to miss anyone's name, but I'm also mindful of time. So yeah, we'll be looking at the road to success. Danny, you and your team with your case study, supplemental instruction from Ashia, the use of lectorials to facilitate active and authentic learning and what that means. From Lutasha and their team, the first year experience from Nosasana, and then of course student mentors, We Dare to Care, which Nadia Barnard had shared, and then of course the tutor program from tutor training program from Nelia. And so I think while this is important, what we wanted to do in this particular session is perhaps to also hear from the contributors what impact the different peer initiatives have had, peer support initiatives has had within their respective universities. And so we came up with these two questions, and perhaps if you could just go to the next slide. And I'm going to ask Edgar to come in here because Edgar and I are doing this particular section together. But before we get there, Sue was very adamant about us. We have to get the slide in. We have to get the slide in. And this particular model was something that we grappled with over and over and over again, looking at the different models of peer support initiatives that were shared. And what we realized that it's not as neatly defined as it once was. And we're finding that peers, tutors, mentors, whether you're working in supplemental instruction, are working in cross-disciplinary, transdisciplinary, cross-boundaries. The lines are no longer as clear as they once were. So we'd be very interested to hear from the contributors. How has their particular initiatives made an impact with student learning? So Edgar, over to you.
Yeah, I think thank you, Azina, for that. I just want to kick us off. I'm also a graduate of the supplemental instruction program, and I know I grew in so many ways, from learning about group dynamics, learning about how to manage myself. I'm sure colleagues who contributed to the chapters, to the case study, should be able to, I think, take us in on how these different peer support initiatives have impacted student learning and success in their own context. Colleagues, we open the space. I think you can raise your hand and we'll be able to just hear from you. Thank you.
I think what we'd like to do here is to create an opportunity for our contributors to perhaps share just a little bit more about their peer initiatives and the impact that it's had. So I see there's a hand from Dani. Thank you.
Zina, and thanks, Zina. Thanks, colleagues. So I hope I'm not putting her on the spot, but I know one of my co-authors, Tshepiso Maleswena, is here as well. And if she's willing and able, I'd like to invite her in, because what I want to do is just very briefly talk about our initiative, but seeing as she is on the ground, that for her to also maybe talk about what it actually means for students and for the peer advisors. Tshepiso, I'm not sure if you're able to unmute, and if you're here, if you're willing to talk about, oh, there we go, I see you, great, thank you. So what I want to do very briefly is just to highlight what we included. We speak about peer advising, and so I think anyone who is here who may be part of the Siyaphumelela network or who is part of academic advising as it emerges in our country should know kind of what's happening and may have a broad insight into that. But very briefly, academic advising has existed globally for a very long time, but it's still very new in our country, having only emerged in the last decade, and real shifts beginning in the last 5 years only. And so what we have done at our institution, and it's been around for about 7 years, is what we call in this case study peer advising. And so it is a peer initiative, but it draws on the principles of academic advising. We've played around with it, refined it over time, And I'd like to invite colleagues to go and read the case, and I'm very happy to talk about it, or we're happy to talk to them about it at another time. It had gone through various kind of cycles. Initially, we called it success tutoring because we didn't have the language. And it was only as we started realizing that what the staff were doing was academic advising, that what our peer support was doing was peer advising as opposed to tutoring. But so I'll stop there, and I'm perhaps just hand over to Tsepiso, and maybe she can talk a little bit about it. They hosted their peer advisor symposium yesterday, the end of year symposium. I saw the photos, which were wonderful. So Tsepiso, over to you.
Thanks, Donnie. So you are putting me on the spot, but talking about peer advising is our passion, so it's fine. Maybe I should answer the second question of how has it impacted student learning and success. And while the emotions are so raw, as Donnie said, we had our year-end function yesterday. In terms of what came out of it, so we have a formal side of it at the start of the year-end symposium, where we have like a reflection session, and each peer advisor presents on what their experience was of being a student, and then also playing the role of advising fellow students. And what came out of there was, it's so amazing. It's the same things that we grapple with as academic advisors. The big thing that they say that they struggled with was objectivity. They would have students come to see them, and one of them said, a student who I know is in my class would come in, want to have a session with me, and the problem she is coming with is the very same thing I'm struggling with. So it's that thing of, I don't want to cry with the student. How do I, maintain composure and play my role as peer advisor, and not just have like the both of us have a crying session in there. And it's the same things that we struggle with as academic advisors. Another peer advisor said they had a student come to them, talk about how they lost a parent and they're struggling to cope. And he had recently also lost a relative a couple of weeks before. So it was, where is the boundary, where's the line, like for you not to put yourself into whatever it is you're advising the student on. And I found that so interesting because, like I said, as an academic advisor, we're also coming into the space with our own issues, and the peer advisors are also then experiencing the same things. And I think for them, it's more heightened because the students are at the same level as them. It's, it's their peers, it's people their age, people in their classes, but just the level of maturity, the level of reflection, and the level of just wanting to really make this a positive as possible, a helpful as possible experience for other students. It was amazing. So I think in terms of the impact on student learning. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to wrap up. Wait, okay. Can you not hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we're just mindful of time.
Yes, so the last thing I just wanted to say is that I think it's really helped students find a voice in the space where previously they didn't have one. So yeah, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Tsepiso and Danny. I see Artie's hand is up. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I am going to keep the camera off though. So thank you, everybody. The program that I basically offered some insight to was a mentorship program. It was a peer mentorship program. And it was initiated at a point in time where mentorship was primarily focused on social support, just inducting students within a new environment. So what we thought to do was recreate it so that it also introduces the academic support aspect. And hence the mentorship program took the form of a disciplinarily specific mentorship program. And that put in a whole other realm to support to our students, something that our students actually was looking forward to. And mind you, it was a completely voluntary program. So at the beginning, most individuals said, no, you won't get too many volunteers, but students know value when they see it. So when students work together, they learn on a much higher level when placed in an environment that they find intimidating. So the students got to work with each other, support each other, and academic learning took place on another level. So they could address challenges with regards to language, disciplinary boundaries, etc. And you found that students who probably enrolled in a course because they wanted to find a space to enroll in at a university, then found that they had a newfound passion for the course. So it took on a level of deeper learning, deeper understanding, deeper love for the discipline. And that's what I love to see evolved in this program. And it's been continuously evolving as we move forward, because we take into account the student voice. So what do they want to see? How how does this program actually impact on their lives? And then we help develop it. So hats off to all of the editors. You did a fantastic job by putting together all of these different initiatives. And from what Zina has stated, which is rightfully so, there are no clear-cut lines between each of these support systems. Each of them actually interlead to each other, and you would find each one of them actually feeding into each other's realm. So what used to be primarily focused on in tutorials can now be led into in mentoring, because both work with students, and you cannot divorce the being from the knowledge. So those are the types of lessons I am drawing from working on this program. So it's such a fantastic thing to actually be a part of, even though it's something that was done for the students primarily. So thank you, that's from my side.
Thank you, Arti. Colleagues, I think we can take one more. Agnes, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you so much, Edgar, for the opportunity. I'm just going to start with the first question that says, what are the different types of peer initiatives that the university is offering? With me, I'm from the University of Limpopo, and there are a number of student support avenues that are put in place to support students academically and socially and economically and psychologically. But from the center where I'm attached, it's we are trying to support the students academically and socially, and then there are initiatives put in place, which is the student mentorship program. We have the tutorship program. We have the supplemental instruction program, which is the one that I'm coordinating, and there is a reading and writing center. All these programs I get to support students. So in this case, the students are given a fair opportunity to either be part as the student support or be the clients for these academic avenues. And as such, they're playing a very important role in such a way that, just to give a typical example, we just from the end of year function for the mentorship program, wherein the keynote speaker was the former mentor, wherein you can see that these programs are really shaping our students in a way that one could think of, because they're not only helping or sharpening them to be what they are for now only, but then also preparing them for the world of work with all these abilities and all these skills that they are acquiring from these programs. They're actually utilizing them or implementing them in the world of work, which is very, very much key, as they are not going to be at the university forever. They are going out there to explore and also showcase what they have acquired in the institution of higher learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Agnes. I'm wondering, Zina, can you take another contributor, if there's any?
I think we have 1 minute left. So if there's anyone who would like to, perhaps as a final contribution, we have asked some of the contributors to contribute in the chat, and even to those who weren't contributors to also contribute in the chat. So I see that there is Sabela. Thank you. 1 minute.
Thanks, colleagues. Can you hear me,
Or
colleagues?
half a minute.
Half a
Shane
minute,
is also-
okay. No, it's just to say I joined in late, but nonetheless, I'm from Walter Sisulu University, and we've got a number of student support components. But for this chapter, I was focusing on PALS and tutors, peer state learning and tutorship program. But I think what I can say is that the importance of understanding our students and context as well was very key for us, considering that our students are coming from, I would say, difficult backgrounds. But nonetheless, the fact that most of them, although some of them were paid, some of them were not paid, they would go an extra mile. Hence, I touch on Ubuntu as part of, as a pedagogy that informs some of these programs. But most importantly, I think for the students as well, the impact on them is the fact that most of them, when we conduct our evaluation, they say, one, the development of competencies, managing of their emotions has been very key, and moving away from autonomy towards interdependence was another key aspect that they raise. Establishing their own identity more than understanding the course content as they assist our students. And I think the last one would be to say the fact that learning is a social construct. But more than that, there's it's an all-inclusive aspect, which is key. And all of them are claiming that. So on this book or chapter, I focus on that in particular. And I thank you, colleagues, for this opportunity. Thank you so much. I know time is against us, but nonetheless, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I think the common thread here, the golden thread, is that in all these case studies and peer support initiatives, we are putting students, taking them from the margins right to the center of the business of the university. I think we've come to the end of this slot. We're moving on to the next one.
Thank you very much, Edgar and Zina, for leading that session. And it was so wonderful to hear the contributors and their voices and the voices of their students bringing in. I'm really looking forward to reading some of those chapters. But I'd like to move on now to the guiding principles, and I'm going to ask Nelia to please come in.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the wonderful engagement so far. So as Sue mentioned, as she was giving you a sense of what you can find in the book, it was mentioned that there would be some, sorry, can I just ask you to please mute yourselves? There's some interference. Thank you so much. So let me go back to what I was saying. As Sue mentioned, at the end of the book, having really worked through and compiled and put everything together, we thought that it would be good to kind of leave you with some guiding principles. And of course, they are by no means exhaustive. But I think what we have seen in these discussions is that we know that peer support initiatives are very complex and varied, and we've seen that in the diagram that Zina referred to, the blurring of roles. And we've also heard that it can obviously also be context specific, and we need to take that into account. So despite that it's complex, despite that it's varied, there are certain principles that should be considered when designing and implementing such initiatives. In the book, we've identified a number of these principles. I'm going to start with the first one, and that's theory to inform practice. You will remember at the start of the session, Kasturi said, we need to ask ourselves, why are we here? What are we here for? And so if we think about theory, our student peer support initiatives should be underpinned by relevant research and theory in higher education. So we need to constantly be asking ourselves, what theories underpin our initiatives, whether they be current initiatives or whether they be future initiatives at the end of the day. And have we considered or spoken to other institutions and benchmark? Now, obviously, this book can be used as a benchmarking practice where you can see what other institutions are doing. What's very important, however, and that leads me to the second principle, is that individual context is important. So students' peer initiatives must be fit for purpose. They must be contextualized and situated within the institution in order to meet the needs of our particular students. Every institution is different. Every student will have different needs, and our resources are different. Furthermore, they must be holistically conceptualized and fully integrated into the curriculum in order to support teaching and learning, and ultimately our students. If we look at the third principle, very, very important, training. Students who offer peer support require both disciplinary knowledge and skills as well as generic skills. Disciplinary knowledge is imparted by our academic staff, which means that tutors require content training, for example, if they are tutoring or SI leaders. Even our mentors require the disciplinary input. So content training. Tutors cannot properly facilitate learning, access to discourse, or transition successfully unless they are systematically supported in a discipline-specific context. It needs to matter. It needs to make sense to our students. They also need to ensure that they are taught how to use innovative pedagogy that will obviously help our students, and they need guidance in order to do this. If we're looking at generic skills or skills that are generally imparted by the institution or academic development practitioners, we're looking at your generic training, facilitation skills, for example. We need to ensure that we offer sustained support to our peer students, and also it needs to be responsive to higher education or the changing higher education landscape. If you think about COVID, we had to very quickly pivot to online, and whoever our peer support or whatever peer support initiative we undertake, we need to ensure that they are trained in such a way that they can be responsive to the situation. The fourth one is working collaboratively, and I think this book really attests to the fact that we are here because of our willingness to work collaboratively, and we need to take that into our institutions. So collaborative relationships are required between academic staff, peers, as well as practitioners who have to work with staff, so staff development practitioners. This can result in the establishment of communities of practice. HALTASA is one such community, as well as our scholarly projects, for example, and obviously sustained support for all stakeholders. Close collaboration will also allow for a clearer understanding of the roles and responsibilities of all stakeholders involved in the various initiatives. And then I'm going to cluster the next two together, and that is evaluation, reflection, and reimagining. Student peer support initiatives must be monitored and evaluated to ensure that they are once again fit for purpose and they are aligned with institutional goals. So we need to create opportunities for both academic staff, for our peers who are involved in these projects, as well as our students and as well as our academic practitioners to evaluate, to reflect, and then to improve practice. And it needs to be an ongoing basis. We need to focus on reflection in action so that as we are doing, we are reflecting and we are changing. We need to be critical, and we shouldn't be scared to be critical of ourselves and what we do. We need to analyze, we need to reevaluate, and we need to implement change. So I leave you with this. These guiding principles will help to ensure that student peer support initiatives remain responsive and continue to play a crucial role in higher education. Thank you, Greg. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Nelia, and thank you for sharing those guiding principles with us. I think it really ties together the themes of the book very nicely, and also, as people have been talking about in the chat, sparking some ideas for future things that we can consider and activities and ways in which we can go about it. So I'm now going to hand over to Tayuri. Tayuri, are you going to share your screen?
Yes, please.
For the lucky draw. Okay.
Yes, for the lucky draw.
There we go.
Okay, let's hope this works. So thank you everyone so far for joining us and for adding your name to lucky draw. So let's see who's our winner. I'm just gonna say share sound. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, are we ready? Should I start? Should
Go
I click?
for it.
Okay.
We're winning $1 million. Is it so?
Whoa.
Well done, Rosalie.
Yay.
Rosalind.
Rosalind Govender. Way, well done.
If she's not here, then we're not going to give it to her.
Thank
so just
you.
check.
I'm here. I'm grabbing it with both hands. Thank you.
Okay.
I was
Thank
praying.
you.
Well done.
Well done.
done.
Book is on your way. Thank you.
And if it's not on its way, Rosalind will remind us. Don't you worry.
Yes, she will. Thank you, guys. All right. Thanks, Greg. Over to you.
Thank you so much to Irene. Well done again to Rosaline, winning a copy of this book. Very exciting reading coming your way. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we've now reached the end of today's program. So I'm going to hand over back to the student learning team to do the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, colleagues. So I'm just going to quickly go through a few acknowledgements that are really important. So before I start, I think we must acknowledge every single student who knowingly or unknowingly, and every single peer supporter who either knowingly or unknowingly have contributed to this work. If I just think about our initiative, how many peer supporters had come before we actually wrote this up, and I want to acknowledge them. Then I also want to extend a word of thanks to all the universities and the colleagues who have contributed case studies, and I'm going to name them, so bear with me. So it's Nosasana Makontu from Cape Peninsula University of Technology, Arthi Ramrang from Mangosuthu University of Technology, Shona Lombard from Stellenbosch University, Nadia Bernard, Tshwane University of Technology, Amal Abrams, Kishore Bukarith, Busayo Igi, Lunel Pinar, and Gregory Doyle from the University of Cape Town, Nelia Frey from University of Johannesburg, Mashia Agnes Mohale from University of Limpopo, Dani Tepiso and Linda from the University of the Witwatersrand, Lutasha Ndesi, Nuran Davids Latif, Deirdre Shippers, and Venetia McGee from the University of the Western Cape, and Sabelo Peter from Walter Sisulu University. Then a special thank you to Rita Ganas for her continued support as the previous Haltasa CLC convener and her current Haltasa president and chairship. And another special thanks to Haltasa for making this book possible, for the University Capacity Development Grant for making money available for this book. And then also to Greg Kroll, our deputy chairperson, one of our deputy chairpersons, for hosting the session today. Kasturi Bahari Leek, who did the session at the start as the previous president. All the editors, I want to thank each and every one of you. You've been introduced, but your contributions must not go unacknowledged. And then last but not least, every other person who joined us here today for this celebration. Thanks, Greg.
Thank you very much, Dani. So many people that were involved in today's session, and thank you so much. Colleagues, we've now come to the end of this very exciting book launch, and thank you so much. We've loved seeing the interaction that's happening in the chat. As we end the session, can I invite you, if it's possible, to please turn your cameras on, so we can have your cameras on if it's possible. So click on the start video and to turn your camera on, and we'll just wave everyone goodbye as we leave today's session. So thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to reading the book, and I look forward to seeing many of you at Haltasa Fest 2022 next week. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Did anyone take a photo?
We're leaving that to you, Rosalind.
There we go.
I'm sure we got some.
Come on, Rosalind, you're our social media influencer.
Yes,
Oh, no.
yes.
Look at all the tech gurus here.
And that's the price you pay for winning the book. You have to take a photo.
This was an
Craig and
extremely
Dani.
wonderful celebration, everybody. Thank you so very much, and such an exciting start to next week's festival. Really,
Yes.
Sue and the
Thank
team.
you.
Greg, thank you. That voice, we're definitely going to use it next year. I mean, next week.
Next week, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Congratulations, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.